All right, so we're diving deep today. And, you sent over some really interesting stuff this time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, excerpts from the Joe Rogan Experience.
Cool.
Episode number 2286, I think it was, with Antonio Brown.
I remember that one.
And, what we're trying to do here is kind of cut through all the noise and find those really valuable insights.
For sure.
Whether it's those unexpected tips on social media or those deeper conversations about what life's like after pro sports.
Absolutely. And I think this conversation is, it touches on a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I think it gives us a chance to see how someone like Antonio Brown, a high-profile athlete, how he kind of handles not just the game, but just life in general, both when he was playing and now.
Exactly. And I think, right off the bat, Rogan kind of gives Brown props for his, pretty engaging and, let's be honest, often hilarious presence on X.
Oh, yeah. He's really something else on there.
Yeah, I mean, formerly Twitter, obviously, but Brown's take on it is really interesting.
Mm.
He actually says he's, intentionally using the platform to bring back some of that laughter, inject some good vibes back into the online world.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and he even jokes about, getting a little wild sometimes, but he seems really grateful to Elon Musk for giving him that space for free expression.
I can see that. What's important here, I think, is understanding that Brown's being pretty deliberate with his online persona, right? Like, in a time when a lot of athletes are super careful about having this polished image, he's going for something more raw, more unfiltered,
Fully.
And that can be a really powerful way to connect with people.
Absolutely.
Even if it, sometimes stirs up controversy. It does make you think, right, about the strategy behind it. Like, is it just pure entertainment? Or is there a deeper level of brand building going on there, like through authenticity?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And then he moves on to talking about the hashtag CN. And I thought this was really insightful.
Oh, tell me about it.
So at first, it was just people calling him crazy after he left football, right?
I remember that.
But then he flips it really cleverly into CTSPN.
Oh, wow.
And uses that as like a platform to share different perspectives on dealing with challenges, overcoming adversity, and even, talking about trauma.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Is like a prime example of taking control of the narrative, right?
Totally.
Instead of letting that negative label define him, he takes it back, makes it his own, and turns it into something positive, something constructive.
Exactly.
And for anyone listening, I think, it just shows you how you can own your story, even use those tough experiences to connect with others.
And help people.
And maybe even help others who might be going through something similar.
Especially in a field like, pro sports where, mental health and the effects of physical trauma are, really starting to be recognized more and more.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge issue.
Yeah, and that kind of naturally leads into a really important discussion about CTE.
Right.
Chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Yeah. Big topic.
Yeah, and both Rogan and Brown, they talk about how there's definitely more public awareness now.
I think the movie Concussion really helped with that.
Oh, definitely. And Brown brings a really kind of a stark personal perspective.
Why not?
He talks about the tragic reality of CTE for former players.
It's heartbreaking.
And even mentions, the passing of Demaryius Thomas and Vincent Jackson, both due to the condition.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's really heavy stuff. And he really emphasizes the importance of, recognizing those signs of head trauma.
Of course.
Advocating for therapy, and even finding humor as a way to cope with something so serious.
I think that's so important.
Yeah.
What's really powerful there is that personal connection, right?
Fully.
It's not just some theoretical risk for him.
He's
seen the effects firsthand.
Yeah.
And for you, the listener, I think that just emphasizes the real long-term consequences of playing these high-impact sports.
Yeah.
And the bravery it takes to not only acknowledge those risks, but to actually talk about them openly. Talk about how you cope, even if it's through something like humor. When you're dealing with something as serious as a neurological condition.
And then they kind of shift gears and talk about something that's, maybe not as glamorous.
Sure.
But it's incredibly relevant, and that's the financial challenges that so many professional athletes face.
After they retire.
After retirement, exactly.
Tough subject.
And Brown throws out this statistic that's pretty shocking.
Oh, really?
He says something like 85% of NFL players go bankrupt.
Wow.
within just a few years of retiring.
That's crazy.
And they talk about how tough it is to go from, these massive salaries to new careers.
That makes sense.
And then there's, this unfortunate vulnerability that comes with that sudden wealth,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
making these athletes, targets for people who aren't exactly looking out for their best interests.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I think, it's a big reality check.
Oh, yeah.
These skills that make someone amazing on the field don't automatically translate to managing a ton of money
No, not at all.
or navigating the financial world.
Right.
So for anyone listening, this is a reminder that, it's not just about financial literacy.
Yeah.
It's about having a really strong support system.
People you can trust.
People you can trust, yeah. Trustworthy advisors to help you out in those situations.
Right, because that transition going from a structured career, where you're making a lot of money, to the uncertainty of retirement,
Yeah.
that can be a huge shock.
Oh, yeah.
And it's something that a lot of, high achievers in all sorts of fields can probably relate to, even if it's, on a different scale.
Absolutely. And then the conversation takes kind of an interesting turn.
Where does it go?
When Brown starts sharing his views on relationships,
Okay.
he suggests that many women today are driven by, seeking the, quote, biggest and better deal, end quote.
Ah,
He even mentions this concept of hypergamy.
interesting.
And this sort of becomes a way for him to transition into a more personal reflection about when he first started noticing the effects of playing football.
Ah, okay. That's an interesting connection.
Yeah.
While that comment about relationships might rub some people the wrong way,
Sure.
I think what's fascinating for the listener is how Brown ties these broader observations about the world to his own experiences as an athlete.
Yeah.
It kind of suggests that this is how he sees things,
Yeah.
maybe shaped by his unique position, and the things he's observed.
Right.
It's a good reminder that, everybody's perspective is influenced by their own life experiences.
Absolutely. And when Rogan asks him directly, have you felt those effects personally?
Mm.
Brown says that, he's always been very aware of his body and played smart, especially as a receiver.
Smart move.
And he circles back to seeing Demaryius Thomas struggle with CTE,
I bet that was tough to see.
which, clearly left a big impact on him.
Yeah,
But he emphasizes that he feels very grounded, very grateful for his football journey,
that's great.
and that he never let, his status go to his head.
Good for him.
And he even says, as players get older, they become so much more aware of the toll it takes on their bodies.
Yeah,
And they start making these calculated decisions for a healthier future.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I mean, it shows a lot of self-awareness and, a long-term perspective,
totally.
which, isn't always easy to find in the high-pressure world of pro sports.
No, not at all.
I think for you, the listener, this really underscores the idea that even in, these physically demanding careers, you can still make a conscious effort to minimize the risks.
Yeah.
And prioritize your well-being in the long run.
Exactly. And his focus on, keeping things in perspective, even after achieving so much success,
That's a big one.
is a really valuable lesson.
It really is.
And then they talk about how, for most professional athletes, the career is pretty short.
Right, compared to, someone like Tom Brady.
Yeah, exactly. And Brown says he feels this, this real urge to advise younger players.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
To be aware of that limited window.
Yeah,
And to really have clear goals.
absolutely.
He really stresses that football is just one chapter.
It's not everything.
Yeah. But life is a marathon.
You got to think long term.
Yeah, and your identity as an athlete shouldn't be the only thing you have.
Right, right.
And that's crucial advice.
Oh, totally.
It goes way beyond sports,
For sure. I think, for anybody listening, this is about having a broader sense of who you are.
Yeah.
And what your purpose is.
Beyond your
job. Exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
And knowing that, career transitions, they're going to happen.
They happen to all of us.
And having a well-rounded perspective
Yeah.
makes those changes.
Makes them a lot smoother.
Yeah.
And more fulfilling.
And then the conversation kind of naturally flows into, the mental challenges that athletes often face when they stop playing,
It makes sense.
including, that feeling of losing your identity.
Yeah. You're not that guy anymore.
Exactly. And Brown, he's very open about recommending therapy
That's great.
and the importance of having a strong support network.
Yeah. People you can talk to.
Yeah, and he even says that he personally sought therapy after his playing career ended.
Good for him.
Focusing on gaining that mental clarity, processing his emotions, and kind of figuring out,
The changes.
yeah, the changes in relationships and how people's motivations change.
That's huge. Him being open about going to therapy,
Yeah,
I think it helps normalize getting that kind of support,
for sure.
especially in a world like pro sports. Yeah.
Which, traditionally it's been very masculine.
Right.
And I think for anyone listening, it just highlights how important it is to address the mental and emotional side
Yeah.
of any big life change.
Absolutely.
And that getting professional help can make a huge difference in how you navigate those transitions.
Couldn't agree more. And then he shares this, somewhat unexpected transition into music after football,
Oh, yeah.
which includes working with Kanye West.
Wow, that's a big name.
Yeah, and he describes it as a really intense but creatively fulfilling experience.
I can imagine.
He even acknowledges, West's strong work ethic, his genius,
Oh, yeah.
but also touches on his, controversial public image
Of course. Yeah.
and some of his new music.
Interesting. So I think that career pivot
Yeah.
really shows his adaptability
Mm.
and willingness to explore new things,
Yeah.
even after achieving so much success in one field.
Exactly.
And, for the listener, it's a good reminder that career paths, they don't always go in a straight line.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
And that unexpected opportunities can pop up.
Yeah.
And the insights he gives into working with someone like Kanye West,
Yeah.
I think it highlights that, sometimes there's a difference between someone's creative talent and their public behavior,
Oh, yeah.
which is something we see a lot in entertainment.
For sure. And then the conversation kind of broadens a little bit,
In a way.
moves into more kind of social and political territory,
Okay.
with Brown sharing his thoughts on the current political climate
Interesting.
and really emphasizing the need to bring back, comedy and love.
I like that.
And he reflects on the changes he's seen on X under Elon Musk, particularly when it comes to, more open expression.
It's definitely been a shift, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And so this really shows that he's engaged with the world
Yeah.
beyond sports and entertainment,
Wow.
and his emphasis on humor
Yeah.
and those positive connections to kind of navigate those social divisions, I think resonates with a lot of people. And his observations about, how things have changed on X
Yeah.
really offer some perspective on how social media is evolving.
And how it impacts, public discourse.
Exactly. And building on that,
Mm-hmm.
they talk about the potential dangers of online censorship
Yeah.
and the importance of, protecting free speech.
Even when those views are controversial.
Even when they are, yeah. And they use the example of, the backlash that Rashard Mendenhall faced for his tweets years ago.
Oh, right.
Which, really shows the real-world consequences of expressing dissenting opinions online.
And the Mendenhall example.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder of how complicated free speech can be
Oh, yeah.
in the digital age, especially for public figures.
Yeah.
I think for you, the listener, it highlights that tension between, having the right to say what you think
Yeah.
and the possibility of, facing backlash personally and professionally,
Absolutely.
which is a debate that's still shaping how we interact online.
Oh, for sure. And then they kind of get into technology and social media trends.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, they talk about Snapchat and its Snap Map feature.
Right, where you can see where your friends are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they discuss, what that means for privacy
Oh, for sure.
and how young people are communicating differently now.
I mean, that's a whole other world.
Yeah.
It really gives you a glimpse into how technology, privacy, and how we socialize, how those things are all changing.
Yeah.
I think it raises some questions for you, the listener, about, the balance between staying connected
Yeah.
and having your own personal boundaries.
Especially in a world that's becoming more and more digital.
Exactly. And how these new technologies are shaping the social landscape for younger generations.
And then there's a little bit of a lighter moment
Okay.
where they talk about beauty standards and cosmetic procedures.
Little more relatable.
Yeah. Just some everyday observations.
I like it, but even those lighter topics, I think they give us some insights into what our society values and the pressures people face when it comes to how they look.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a reminder that, even in conversations that seem, on the surface, pretty superficial, there can be these deeper cultural trends at play.
Yeah, for sure. And then they circle back to some more serious concerns,
What are they talking about?
focusing this time on challenges facing young men today.
Interesting.
Specifically, the easy access to pornography
Yeah.
and the pressure to send, those unsolicited, explicit images,
Right. Right.
which, brings up some important questions about how online content is affecting, how young people are developing.
It's a tough subject, but it's a necessary one.
Yeah,
I think it highlights some of the more worrying aspects of the digital world
for sure.
and how they might be affecting, how young people understand relationships,
Yeah.
consent, and healthy sexuality.
And it's a conversation that really underscores the need for more education.
Absolutely.
And open, honest conversations about being responsible online.
Couldn't agree more. And then both Rogan and Brown,
Yeah.
they share some stories about disturbing content they've seen online.
Oh, yeah.
Which, it's a pretty stark reminder of just how much stuff is out there and how, unsettling some of it can be.
And how unfiltered it is.
And how unfiltered it is, right?
Yeah.
It makes you think about, the responsibility that both the people creating the content and those consuming it have in navigating this, massive online world.
Totally. And then out of nowhere,
What happens?
they get a live phone call from Sean Kingston,
Oh, wow.
who, calls in to say he's a fan of the show.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was just a really fun, spontaneous moment.
I love those moments, those unscripted things.
Yeah.
They can really make these long conversations feel more, more genuine.
Yeah, more real.
More real, and it gives you a glimpse into their world and how they interact with people in their network.
And then they get into talking about some comedians that they really like.
Oh, nice.
Sharing stories and
Yeah.
kind of reinforcing that earlier point about the importance of humor.
Yeah, and positive connections.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's so important.
Yeah, and their shared appreciation for comedy, I think, just shows how valuable it is as a way to deal with life's challenges.
And it brings people together.
Yeah, it brings people together, offers some perspective,
Absolutely.
and then they touch on free speech again
Okay.
with a sense that things are moving in a better direction.
That's good.
With, platforms being more open to different ideas.
It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it goes back to that earlier point about online discourse evolving
Yeah.
and the value of hearing different voices and perspectives.
Absolutely. Everyone should have a chance to be heard.
And then the conversation takes a really interesting turn.
Oh, where does it go?
They start talking about UFOs.
No way, really? Yeah. And both of them are kind of a mix of curious and skeptical.
It's hard not to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It adds a whole other dimension to the conversation.
Makes you think.
It does. It really makes you think. And then Brown, he shares his own theory
Oh, about what?
about the Men in Black.
Interesting.
He suggests that, maybe they're actually government agents
Ah,
investigating weird stuff.
makes you wonder.
Yeah, it adds, a bit of mystery and speculation.
It's like he's connecting a popular myth
Mm-hmm.
to a possible real-world explanation,
Totally.
tapping into that, that whole idea of government secrets
Yeah.
and investigating the unknown.
And then they kind of shift gears again
Okay.
and get into personal development.
All right.
And Brown shares this, kind of wild experience he had with being hypnotized by Tony Robbins.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, facilitated by Tom Brady
No way.
to visualize success.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and they talk about the power of manifestation and visualization.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But, also recognizing that you need talent and hard work and discipline.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's not just about thinking the right thoughts.
No.
You got to put in the work.
And this story that he tells about Tony Robbins,
Yeah.
it really offers some insight into the mindset and technique.
That high achievers use, yeah.
Yeah, and I think for you, the listener, it shows that mental preparation and visualization can be really powerful.
If you combine them with real effort and your natural abilities.
Absolutely. It's not just wishing for things.
Right. It's about focused intention that drives action.
Exactly. And they really emphasize discipline
Oh, yeah.
as being, absolutely crucial for success.
Especially in pro sports.
Oh, yeah. And they even touch on, the idea that just relying on the secret
Right.
without putting in the work.
Won't get you very far.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disappointment.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really crucial point.
Oh, yeah.
It's about finding that balance
Mhm.
between having a positive mindset
Yeah.
and actually doing the work.
Doing the work, exactly.
It's a good reminder for anyone listening that, while your mindset is important,
Mm-hmm.
you still got to roll up your sleeves and put in the effort to get real results.
Exactly. And Brown talks about his repeated experiences with Tony Robbins' mindset coaching
Interesting.
and how it positively impacted him, especially during tough times in his NFL career.
So it really made a difference.
It did, and he really stresses the power of becoming undeniably good at what you do as the best way to respond to negativity or haters.
That's a good strategy.
It is, and so
Yeah.
it really shows, the benefits of investing in mental coaching
Yeah.
and building that resilience.
It's like shifting the focus
Yeah.
from worrying about what other people think
Right.
to just being excellent.
To just being the best.
Yeah, letting your work speak for itself.
And then the topic of haters comes up, and, they both acknowledge that while a little bit of negativity can be motivating,
Sometimes it lights a fire under you.
yeah, but if you dwell on it too much,
It'll eat you up.
it's not good.
Right. It's all about balance, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of criticism can be fuel, but you can't let it define you.
Absolutely. And then they get into combat sports.
Okay.
And Brown says he's a huge UFC fan
Makes sense.
and even jokes about maybe fighting if he hadn't played football.
That would have been interesting to see.
It would have, yeah. He talks about, his limited martial arts background
Yeah.
and the risks that come with, head trauma in those sports.
Of course. It's always a concern.
Yeah, it's another potential path he could have taken.
Right. And it highlights how, those demands and risks,
Yeah.
they kind of overlap across these different high-impact sports.
Exactly. And then they preview an upcoming UFC fight
Oh, cool.
and talk about how powerful Alex Pereira is.
He's a beast.
Yeah, they even compare his punching power to Francis Ngannou's
Wow.
based on that punch machine.
Yeah.
And they even try to show a video of Pereira's power.
That's awesome. It's like
Right.
they're bringing in, data and visuals
Yeah.
to really show what these top-level athletes can do.
And then they talk about how exciting it is to see UFC events live in Vegas.
Oh, yeah. The energy must be incredible.
Yeah, and Brown even invites Rogan to go with him.
That'd be a fun trip.
It would, and this leads into a brief discussion about slap fighting.
Oh, wow. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It's intense.
And they get into the rules and what makes it so unique.
Compared to, regular boxing or MMA.
Yeah, it's pretty different. And there's even some talk about, maybe seeing more gladiator-style fights in the future.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. And then they switch over to boxing,
Okay.
talking about a recent fight between Gervonta Davis and Lamont Roach.
Right. Right.
And Brown, he's not impressed with Davis's behavior during the fight.
What happened?
Well, at one point, Davis takes a knee and seems to be complaining about his hair.
His hair.
Yeah, and they kind of analyze the rules around taking a knee in boxing
Yeah.
and whether it should have been considered a knockdown.
That's a tough one.
It really shows how sometimes the officiating in combat sports can be subjective.
Yeah.
And how even these little things can cause controversy.
And Brown's opinion, it adds that personal element to it.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely got strong feelings about it.
And they also mentioned that power slap rule,
Oh, right.
where if you get knocked out, you get a chance to come back with a single slap.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
It's very different,
It is.
compared to boxing or MMA.
And then they go back to the Davis-Roach fight
Okay.
and mention that there was a technical issue
Oh, no.
that prevented them from using instant replay.
During that controversial moment.
Yeah, and Brown's convinced that Roach should have gotten a knockdown.
And maybe even the win.
Yeah, and he really wants to see a rematch.
It's interesting, the whole replay thing.
It is.
It shows how, human error can really affect the outcome of a fight.
Oh, absolutely. And Brown really criticizes Davis's conduct.
Yeah, he wasn't happy about it.
No,
No.
not at all. He says it was unbecoming of a champion.
There were certain expectations, I guess.
Yeah, and then they briefly look ahead to a potential fight between Terrence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez.
Oh, that would be huge.
It would, and they talk about the different weight classes.
And how Crawford would handle it?
Exactly. And then they go off on this tangent about deadlifts
Okay.
and how they might not be so good for you.
Interesting.
Yeah, Brown says a strong man actually advised him against doing them
Huh.
and suggests some other exercises for strengthening your back.
It's good to get different perspectives, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Even on exercises that, everyone seems to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Host.